David. Thank you. Good evening. I am George Margulies, Chairman of the County's Charter Review Commission. And in a few minutes, I'm going to ask my colleagues on the commission to introduce themselves. Welcome to the first of 5 listening sessions that the commission is holding over the course of the next several months. The first 3 will be virtual, with the last 2 tentatively scheduled to be in person, weather and COVID permitting. The county's charter is akin to our county's constitution. The commission's charge is to review its provisions and make recommendations to the council for amendments that may be placed in the ballot every other November for the voters to decide whether to adopt or not. The commission has tentatively considered and seeks your input on the following. You may speak to any or all of them. Whether to amend Section 206 of the Charter regarding the removal of a county executive for the additional reasons of serious misconduct in office or willful neglect of duty, provided that the willful neglect of duty must be demonstrated to have occurred for 180 consecutive days. The proposed amendment would additionally require an affirmative vote of not less than 80% of the county council, in lieu of the current threshold of 6 of 9 members of the county council. The commission is also interested in hearing whether to amend Section 118, which is applicable to council members, to provide similar provisions for removal. Also, another one is whether to amend Section 203 of the Charter so as to increase the length of time that an individual must reside in the county in order to qualify to serve as county executive, from the current requirement of 1 year to a 3-year residency requirement. Similarly, the commission tentatively considered, subject to review, following these listening sessions, to recommend that council members meet the same 3-year residency requirement. There is none currently. And lastly, whether to amend the charter to clarify what occurs when 2 questions on the ballot are both approved by the voters but are irreconcilable, as was possible in the 2020 election when 2 diametrically opposed proposals as to the composition of the council were on the ballot. The commission has tentatively proposed, subject to revision after the listening sessions, that in such an instance, only the amendment that receives the higher number of favorable votes would take effect. We'll hear from those now who signed up in advance. We'll also be glad to hear at the end from those who didn't have the opportunity to sign up in advance. Everyone who has signed up in advance was informed that they have 3 minutes to speak. And you are definitely free to submit any lengthier written testimony for the record. But I'm intending to be very flexible for the time. There are 4 more listening sessions after today's, the next one being on Sunday, November 14th at 2 p.m. Please do advise your colleagues and your neighbors to sign up to speak. Before going any further, I would like to ask my fellow commissioners to introduce themselves, and going at least on the screen, on my screen, let's start up in the upper left-hand corner with Ron and go to the right.
Good evening, all. I'm Ron Stubblefield, the Vice Chair of the Commission, CPA by profession, and please don't hold that against me. And I've been a resident of Montgomery County since 1981, and I thank you all for coming into our listening session so we can really help to try to represent your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Galina?
I'm Galina Teverovsky, a member of Commission. I'm a resident of Montgomery County since 1993. By degree, I'm an engineer, and now I work in the Library of Congress, and I'm happy and humbled to be a member of our commission and do my best to help.
Thank you. Susan? Susan?
Yes, I wanted to unmute myself.
Thank
My
you.
name is Susan Miles, and I have been a member or resident of Montgomery County since 1987. I'm an attorney by, well, not currently practicing, but work for the federal government. And I guess that's about all.
It's plenty. David?
Good evening, everybody. My name is David Hill. Lived in the county since 1991. Am a practicing attorney as well as a consultant. And I'm very appreciative of the time you're spending to share your thoughts with us this evening.
Chris?
Thank you, George. My name is Chris Danley. I am, like Susan and David, an attorney. I have been a resident of Chevy Chase for the past 7 years.
Kathy?
Hi, I'm Kathy Gugulis. I've lived in the Montgomery County for about 40 years. I currently live in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I am a journalism major, but I was mostly involved in administration for the federal government. I'm retired. Look forward to hearing from you.
Larry?
I'm Larry Lauer. I am not an attorney.
Good for you.
And I try to avoid them as far as possible. I'm a retired University of Maryland administrator and live in Albany, Maryland since 1988, and I'm a lifelong county resident. My second term on this committee, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to come and talk about these important issues.
Perry?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Perry Paylor. I too suffer from the disease. I am an attorney. Parents moved us into Montgomery County back in 1974. And I currently reside on the eastern part of the county in the Colesville, White Oak area of Montgomery County. I'm just glad to be here today. I'm looking forward to the comments from our participants.
Thank you, Perry. All right. I think that covers all of our commissioners. Commissioners may have questions after our speakers speak. So fair warning. At this point, I'm going to ask Ms. Wellens, our staff member, if you'll call upon the individuals who we have signed up in advance to speak.
Certainly, happy to do so. Welcome, everybody. This first speaker is Mr. Lautman, and I will invite him to unmute and start his video if he wishes.
By the way, Ms. Lautman, good to see you again.
Thank you very
held
much.
yourself to speak at our last listening sessions last time around.
It was easier then. It was easier. Okay, so I'm sure some of you may remember me, and I guess I just like to say a message to Evan Glass, who was the big opponent on our big opponent, and the guy has boundless energy. It was, I came to learn that directly and indirectly, and he knows how to put together a campaign, people, resources, a winning campaign. So definitely want to congratulate him on that. All righty, so one of the items that you folks are considering is what happens should two conflicting referenda pass. And I believe that this, as Mr. Gugulis said, in 2020, we had two pairs of conflicting referenda. We had A and B. I didn't follow that all that much, but I certainly was involved in C and D. And it's really important to cover the highlights of the timeline that brought about these two conflicting referenda, C and D. So I believe that the whole thing started when Mark Elrich, he expressed concern that all four at-large representatives of the county council came from that small down county crescent. And I believe, if I recall correctly, that it was his prompt that launched your investigation into the entire matter. So you folks did the due diligence and executed as required. And we had a whole lot more people than we have now coming in for the listening sessions and deliberations and research and policy and on and on. And, you know, you folks did your job. And of course, the result was 5 people on the committee for the status quo and 4 people going for single member districts. And I think you submitted your recommendation. It was February or March of 2020, and the silence was deafening. Well, at the same time as you folks started your investigation, a group of residents formed a committee to bring about to get on the ballot a referendum to, in fact, replace the at-large representation with a single member district. So we have 9 districts for Montgomery County. And we started collecting our signatures in the summer of 2019. The world was quite different then. And we were at the Wheaton picnic. And in fact, Mr. Glass happened to have been there at the same time. And we had our first encounter. So Mr. Glass did know, he was probably the first county council member to know of our efforts back in the summer of 2019. And we continue on. Some of us appeared before this commission, and we, in fact, submitted our signatures on August 2nd or 3rd of 2020. And a few days later, the council convenes and they pass a pop-up referendum. It was approved by the county's attorney. It doesn't violate the Maryland Open Meetings Act. It's don't need hearings, don't need research, don't need anything. And sure enough, that is how we got 2 conflicting referenda on the ballot. It was a reaction to ours. The timeline is very much a public record. And by doing so, the county council flushed every single minute of your time and effort. And it was bizarre. I mean, if they would have done nothing, they still could have, you know, they definitely had the advantage on the battlefield, and they could have easily worked to help defeat question D. And then, you know, we just have the status quo. But to say that, you know, Mr. Glass, he said he's been thinking about it and working about it for 2 years previously, and there's no indication, not even in the testimony he gave before this committee. So something is not adding up here. And now you folks are considering a measure in which, should 2 referenda pass, then the one that gets the most votes prevails. First of all, I find that outcome to be extremely unlikely. I mean, look what happened. I forgot the percentages, but you know, question C won by a significant margin, and question D lost by a significant margin. So I find it hard to believe that both would prevail, but apparently somebody is concerned that this issue will come up again, and it will come up again. But somebody's concerned about the low probability outcome that they may both pass. But here's the problem. Our campaign highlighted the voter dilution on the county council. 4 at-large members out of 9 at the time, 4 out of 11 now. It's a heavy dose of voter dilution, and the opposition never could come up with a voting rights expert activist who denied that. It goes back to 1788, and it's all through the Supreme Court. It is voter dilution, and now you're considering a measure to cancel out a majority vote. And I understand one majority is larger than the other majority, but nevertheless, considering the circumstances in which question C came on the ballot, which was just a reaction to a voter, to the residents' demand for reform, And then to go ahead and should they both pass, then the one that is, the pop-up referendum automatically wins and cancels out a majority vote. That only increases the voter dilution in Montgomery County. So I really, really, really think you should drop this. I mean, I can just, not that I'm actively pursuing this, but I'm sure somebody out there is going to be putting this through the judicial process, should it in fact come to pass. But this really is outlandish. Now, what should you folks be doing? And this would be, let's end on a positive note here. Number one, I think preventing the county council from putting on a conflicting referendum after voters petition to have their own referendum on it. And then to go ahead, and yes, we've been thinking about this for decades, how we want to go ahead and make this change only as a reaction to what the citizens want. Maybe we should consider avoiding that. And then therefore you won't have to worry about two conflicting referenda. But here is something that I think that really came out in the campaign. And that is at-large representation. We know Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Earl Warren, all these names that we've mentioned, they all agree that it is voter dilution. But there is a nonprofit that works on voting rights. It's called Vote Fair, votefair.org. And it's headquartered in, of all places, Tacoma Park. Tacoma Park came across as definitely supporters of voter dilution. But nevertheless, this particular organization just rails against voter dilution, be it gerrymandering or be it multi-member at-large. And we used their material liberally during our campaign. And I talked to one of their head researchers. His name is George Pillsbury. This is about 3 weeks before the election. I'm trying to get advice from him. What should I do? And so he asks me, well, what's your county council like in Montgomery County? I say, well, we have 5 directs and 4 at-larges. And the guy says, that's the best thing you could possibly ask for. You understand? This is what he's telling me 3 weeks before the election, and I'm using his material. But Mr. Pillsbury says, yeah, this is definitely a good composition when the at-large contingent is elected through ranked choice voting. That prevents this mess and these unconvincing wins when the winner of the Democratic primary in the at-large races gets 10%, which means 90% of the Democrats don't want them to proceed to the general election. It's a very, very unconvincing win. It's not very legitimate. But with ranked choice voting, we won't go into the details here, with ranked choice, surely that all these voting rights activists will tell you that that is the best expression of voter preference. You have 1 direct member for you and 4 at-larges elected by everybody and not by 10 or 20, 25% of the population time and time again. So that would, if you guys would get that through, then you folks really, really would have made a great, great step to taking away the threat of conflicting referenda, and more importantly, getting rid of the scourge of voter dilution right here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lautman. Any questions from commissioners? Any clarifying questions? Hearing none, I thank you again. And we'll move on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Lautman. And the next speaker is David Kossab. Mr. Kossab, if you would like to unmute and start your video. And I hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly, and apologies if I am not.
Mr. Kossab, you gonna unmute your microphone and your video. You were there a second ago. Where do you go? Mr. Kossab?
I don't see him either. I tried to hit the ask to unmute button, and I sure hope I didn't inadvertently kick him off, but I hope that he'll rejoin. I just pressed the ask to unmute, so I'm not sure if he decided to leave or what happened.
Well, while we call on the next person, if there is a next person, maybe you can kick them back in and find a way to.
Yeah, let's see.
I don't know if Melissa King has joined us. I don't see her name. Has Melissa King joined us?
I don't believe so. We do have 3 attendees who, although they are not in the pre-registered list, if you'd like, I
Sure.
can invite them to join.
Well, let me first ask Miss LeBrun, has she decided whether she might wish to speak or not?
Yes, I would like to speak.
All right,
Now
well,
that I see it.
let me call on Miss LeBrun then.
All right. Again, I had no idea that I would be speaking tonight. I thought that our situation that has come before CCOC was going to be discussed and hopefully decided tonight. I am a resident of Westlake Towers. We had an election of the board in May that was overseen by the League of Women Voters. We have not been able to seat the candidates who were elected. My understanding is that the reason why we can't is because certain people in our building filed a petition, or maybe more than one, I don't know. But the bottom line is that this has dragged on now since May. Our building is in terrible turmoil, a lot of unrest because of this, because it hasn't been settled. The board as it exists right now, which is the old board, I'm told cannot make certain decisions until this is settled. I believe that it was suggested by a number of people that we have a new vote, and that was also turned down. So why is it taking so long for this to be settled? And who ultimately is going to settle it for us? Those of us who, I've been on the board in my building before. I know the CCOC. I was always under the impression that your organization was the final arbiter, the only arbiter.
No, I think you're mistaken in that regard. The Charter Review Commission doesn't have any authority over your board or your association. You may be thinking of the Housing Opportunities Commission.
No, I'm not even familiar with that.
The Charter Review Commission doesn't have jurisdiction over your board or the issues that you're bringing to our attention. I regret to say that to you, by the way. But I read in the beginning the issues we're discussing today, and even if you were to bring another matter to our attention at this point, we don't have jurisdiction over the matter you're bringing to our attention at this point, Ms. LeBrun. I regret to tell you.
Would you kindly repeat for me the name of that board, the housing, what?
It might be the Housing Opportunity Commission. I don't know, Christine, is there any other agency that would be appropriate for Ms. LeBrun to contact?
The Common Ownership Board, right, Christine?
Is that the CCOC? I am not sure, but I would be happy to look into it. And it sounds like Mr. Paylor has an idea of what it might be. Common Ownership Board, you said?
I forget the formal name, but it's where all the condo and homeowners come. Yeah.
Thank you for correcting that, Perry.
Ms. LeBrun, I can follow up with you separately. I can find the appropriate contact information for you, and I'm happy to either call you or email you with that.
Could I have your name so I can maybe?
Certainly. Yes, it's Christine with a CH, last name Wellens, WELLONS.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I'm on the council staff, and I'll be happy to follow up and point you in the right direction.
That would be excellent. And just one other question to the gentleman. I'm sorry, I don't have your name in front of me. You just spoke to me.
Mr. Margulies, the
Yeah,
chair.
oh, you. Yes.
Okay.
Tell me again. You don't have jurisdiction of what is it about our charter?
The body you're speaking to today is the Charter Review Commission.
All
And
right.
our responsibility is to look into the county's charter, which is akin to the constitution of the county, and to recommend amendments, proposed amendments to the county council to potentially put before the voters every 2 years, each November.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate it.
And I
Christine?
appreciate your coming before us this evening, and hopefully Christine will put you in the right direction.
That would be wonderful. Thank you again.
Christine,
Yes,
it's the Office of Common Ownership.
Office of Common Ownership.
Thank you,
Stewart,
Barry.
It's Department of Housing and Community Affairs. So,
Thank you, Perry.
yeah, they're like the umbrella organization for all the HOAs.
Thank you.
Now, I noticed, Christine, that we've been rejoined by Mr. Kosub.
Wonderful, Mr. Kosub. If you're able to unmute and start your video, I don't want to press any buttons that might mess you up.
Sorry, this is David. I was just calling in for listening mode only. I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Well, thank you for letting us know. You're
Sorry,
welcome.
I accidentally hit the wrong button last time. I hung up myself. So
I've done that
apologies.
myself before. Then you continue to listen by
Thank
all
you very
means.
much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this point who has joined us to listen, or at this point wishes to speak who may not have pre-registered to sign up to speak? Is there anyone who might wish to speak at this point? Who's on the webinar here? If so,
George, I believe one of the attendees was raising their hand, and let me see. Ms. Mitchell, did you want to speak?
Hi, yes, I'm Laura Mitchell. I am the chair of one of the county's BCCs, the Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Advisory Council.
great.
And so welcome to the BCC world, and thank you for everything that you're doing. All volunteers, as I may point out, for anyone who didn't know that. One of the things that we have been working on and talking about a lot, as have other professionals in the field and advocates, is changing the language of both mental health and substance use. But our particular focus in our BCC is substance use. And throughout the charter, including our committee's name, our council's name, we use words like abuse and other stigmatizing language that most experts are on board with changing. So what I would like to request of the commission is that you review the document that NIDA put out, the National Institute of drug abuse. Yes, it's in their name too. See, it's everywhere, and we really have to change that because it does affect the number of people and how that will ask for help and where they will ask for help or not, and the way that people perceive those who are even in recovery for many years afterward, having that stigma on their in their history really does make a difference. So things like calling drug court recovery court would be great, but that's tied to federal money. But what we can change here in the county is the names that we use for our boards and commissions, and we can change the language in the charge that's given to our commissions, and to just do kind of a wholesale review of what language you're using and what message we're sending with our charter for around mental health and substance use and any other related issue.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Any questions from commissioners for Laura Mitchell? Kathy?
Ms. Mitchell, thank you for coming before us. Do you have alternative language that you're recommending?
I do, and I'm happy to send that to you along with the NIDA document and another one that was created by Harvard retirees, really called the Addiction Bursary, play on words for the dictionary. A lot of what we do is predicated on our name and getting people's attention to come to our site and get our resources. But as soon as they see abuse, they recoil. And as a parent of someone who spent 15 years in active recovery and is now active addiction, I'm sorry, and is now 6 years in recovery and got married last Saturday, I can say that.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was fantastic. And I can tell you that they do recover, but we have to be open and we have to be helpful in helping them make sure there is a path and helping them walk that path to recovery. And I think this is a great first step, and I'm happy to share that language. We did submit about a year ago now a request for a name change for our committee. So that may be something that's already in the mix for you because it is in the charter, but I'm not sure that you've seen it. So I wanted to highlight that for you.
Well, if you like to submit the language, you can do it one of two ways. You can send it to Christine Wellens, our staff person at the council, or our email address is montgomerycountymd.gov/CRC.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak who might be on our site at this very moment? Oh, Perry, I'm sorry. I apologize. You had a question for Laura?
Yeah, I had a question for Ms. Mitchell, if she's still on.
I apologize, Perry.
Yeah, Ms. Mitchell, if I don't know if you heard, but one of the parts we're considering today is removal of office for elected officials, both county executive and at some point council members, for different, allegations and behavior. Would you recommend a carve out for whether it's behavior connected to addiction or behavioral health issues? And how would you see us going about that?
Well, I think that, first of all, I have to, I would like some clarification. You said for allegations. I understood that the proposal was for maybe not a conviction, but proven allegations. Is that correct? So just because someone says you did something doesn't mean that you did that, as all the attorneys on here know.
Right.
So, I'd like to be clear on that first, but I think that we have evolved to the point where we know, we can see in brain scans and other medical evidence that addiction is a disease. There's some choice in it, but there's also a lot that is taken from you in that active addiction, particularly with opioids. It truly hijacks the brain. So I think that much like many of our larger employers have and our government entities have a employee assistance plan, something where they're given maybe a suspension or something like that, or they're off for a while and they go through a treatment program and get back on track if they're willing to do that. That may be something to consider as a carve out, that option is there. But if the law is broken and they are sworn to uphold the law, that it gets a little tricky. It really does. And they hold the public trust. So I think that could be something to consider, but it wouldn't be something I would strongly advocate for in an elected official's position. If they do get into recovery and are strong in their recovery and they run again and people see that they have made the changes they need to make, then they'll be reelected. It's not a position that you get fired from and can't come back like an employee would. So I view that as a little bit different. I served in elected office for 5.5 years in Salisbury on the city council. And so it is different. It really is. because you hold that public trust and you're dealing with other people's money and lives and livelihoods.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this time before the commission? We haven't seen Miss King, have we, Christine? I don't believe so.
No, I have not.
Okay. Assuming there is no one else who wishes to speak, we'll consider this listening session over. As stated earlier, the next one will be held on Sunday, November 14th at 2 p.m. Please advise your friends and colleagues to sign up at our website. Written testimony is also always welcome to be sent to the commission's website. We thank you, those who participated today. We'll also consider all that was stated along with the testimony yet to be heard before making our recommendation to the council by May 1st as required by the county charter for matters to be considered for the November 2022 ballot. Thank you, everybody who participated today. Have a good evening.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.